this afternoon. Looking at our agenda here, we first will start with roll call and introductions. Chip, why don't we start with you, go around the room.
Chip Wamsley, Bicycle Board.
Matthew Cross, Pedestrian Safety Board.
Drew Gatlin, Staff Engineer, City of Morgantown.
And I'm Brendan Williams. I am the president and the 5th Ward representative.
Bill Kowecki, Second Ward, actually council representation.
Sharon Patrick, 6th Ward, and Vice Chair, I believe.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, we have a visitor, staff visitor today.
I'm Caitlin Lewis, I'm Community Development Services Coordinator with Development Services.
For anybody listening online, that is Caitlin Lewis, Community Development Services Coordinator with the Department of Development Services. Yes.
In order to be recorded, you need to be at the microphone.
Yes. I would like to pose to the commission that we invite Caitlin up to sit in one of the microphone chairs, if possible.
If that makes sense to your presentation, certainly.
Mm-hmm. This is not her presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, but anybody opposed? No? Seems like not?
No.
Good. All right. Very good.
Make yourself comfortable, Caitlin. Hey, welcome. Well, next on the agenda is public comment. I'm sorry, did you have a wish? Okay, just wish to observe. Okay, not a problem. You just missed all the introductions, but perfect, great. So no public comment tonight. Next big ticket item is the summary of neighborhood meeting reports. I think we wanted to give Caitlin the opportunity, since with her role now with the city is kind of a neighborhood association liaison, if I understand correctly. And since we've probably gotten away a little bit from more neighborhood representation and getting into the neighborhoods other than the folks that represent the different wards here. Caitlin's been gracious enough to fill us in on some of her travels to neighborhood association meetings. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Caitlin, to kind of give us an update on what you've been hearing at
Yeah.
these meetings.
So I don't have anything formal prepared, but I've been like you described, sort of in my role, I've been attending neighborhood association meetings, and I've attended 2 so far, so I haven't attended all of them at all. But what I anticipate will be a big concern will be a lot of traffic related things, crosswalks, signage, that sort of thing. So I imagine that'll be things that happen on the agendas at those meetings often. The Jerome Park meeting, a crosswalk immediately came up. They discussed a crossing at Hartman Run Road. So I believe there's been a traffic study conducted there previously. But, I imagine things of that nature will happen often at these meetings. And so, I think that's going to be a forum for a lot of traffic related, discussions and maybe concerns as well, and opportunities too. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, great, Caitlin. I know you've only been to 2 meetings. Does anyone have any questions for Caitlin? I agree it's probably going to be a good way to kind of funnel some information to us, especially if folks can't make it to the public comment portion and into looking at specific areas.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been to a Jerome Park meeting before, and that was the big ticket item, was talking about those things.
Yeah, and what I anticipate, or what I hope, is that we'll see a lot of maybe gaps in the resources that we could be providing to people, and I think we'll get some sort of hyper localized feedback about specific areas. So I won't sit in on every meeting, every month necessarily, but I'll try to attend as many as I can. And I think at that, traffic related stuff will get some very hyper localized, very specific type of feedback. So there's value in that, I think. So yeah.
Wonderful. I agree. Well, any questions for Caitlin? Well, I would like to extend a welcome and thanks for your help and willingness to keep us abreast of what's going on in the community.
Great.
So
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, Seth.
Do you have, I guess I did have one question about that Hartman Run crosswalk request. Do you know if they submitted this via the Morgantown 311 app?
I don't think they have, and this was not a formal request. It was more of sort of an aspirational discussion. It sort of came from a trails-related discussion, how they were kind of talking about what a good connection it would be to have that neighborhood connected to the Aldi and the shopping area down below. I don't know the details of, or the logistics at all of what that would entail. The only thing that I found was that there was a DOT traffic study conducted in that area, not specifically at that crossing at Hartman Run Road, but the area where Deckers Creek Boulevard meets. I don't know what that street is there, but I think you know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of existing data there already, but I don't think that they've submitted a formal request at this point, no.
Are you referring to the conceptual plan that the Department of Safety in the Central Planning Office of the DOH proposed for a crossing at Mineral Avenue?
Yes, I believe that's the one. Sorry, I don't have the specific details in front of me, but it was available on the MMMPO website, so it was part of their study.
Yeah.
I was going to say that was part of the MMPO, and that was brought up at one time, looked at. That was probably a year and a half ago now.
Right, yeah, so that was part of the Baker's Dozen projects that was identified in the 2020 Regional Bike Ped Plan, in terms of what was most important, in terms of the analytical, objective analysis, as well as the policy board's priorities after the project lists had been developed for that, again, that 2020 Regional Bike Ped Plan. So, has been a regional priority. Of course, we should remind everybody that's listening and ourselves that that is a state route, and so the city has no direct authority to tell the state to supply a crosswalk there. I mentioned that the Central Planning Office did, I believe orally and maybe in writing, commit to building that project.
Nice.
However, that individual has since moved on from the DOH. And so other projects that person had committed to were crossings on Walnut Street, on Route 7, at Chestnut Street, doing a bump out there and essentially eliminating the travel lane, the left-bound travel lane that is parking sometime part of the day and then travel lane another part of the day, if anybody's aware of that, in between Chestnut Street and High Street. And so that would just become a parking lane full-time. And the DOH is actually about to kick off curb ramp projects, and that is specifically not going to happen there. And so we see a disconnect from commitments made at the centralized office level, which is where we've basically been told to go and ask for help or coordination, and the district level, which is performing these curb ramp upgrades at these exact locations. So anyway, sad to see these projects come and go without realization, but it's good to know the neighborhood finds it remains a priority to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's still wanted in that area, so I think they are, open to maybe resuming talks about it, or maybe see some efforts towards that.
So they mentioned Hartman Run. It wouldn't actually be a crossing on Hartman Run. It would be a crossing on Powell Avenue to Route 7.
Yeah, I think the discussions about Hartman Run, that specific area, were because there's already a stoplight there. So I think that sort of just got raised as, oh, well, the stoplight already exists at this space. It would make sense to put a crossing in as well. I don't know who owns those parcels. I don't, again, I don't know what the logistics of that would be necessarily. I think some of it's MUB owned, So there may be a reason why that's not, developed, so.
Oh, so they were not just talking about a crosswalk, but maybe a
Connection,
trail
full
down?
connection and then a crosswalk as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the benefit of, you all, the ultimate recommendation from the 2020 regional plan was a bridge crossing from Paul Preserve Park there, across Powell Avenue and directly connecting into the Deckers Creek Rail Trail. Yeah, so that is certainly aspirational.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that fees, or well, is it, I guess, is it projected to happen within a timeframe, or is it sort of just like an aspirational project?
So what the
I don't know
DOH
anything about
committed to, right, or ostensibly committed to, when the MPO went to 20% design with those Baker's Dozen projects, was a surface crossing, and essentially connecting the sidewalk from Mineral Avenue down towards the developed area a little bit, and then another sidewalk connection across the street, and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon protected crossing there with a median island, and then essentially a curb radius change to slow traffic entering into Deckers Creek Boulevard to protect people that are crossing there on the trail.
Right.
From the high-speed traffic that takes that at speed sometimes. So DOH did not, at least at that time, think that a bridge was, something they wanted to entertain. And the original idea for that crossing came out of a WVU engineering capstone class. So they saw it presented and they liked it and went to, again, theoretically, ostensibly committed to it, but we haven't heard anything for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was brought up that project was brought up at the meeting as well. Yeah, so.
I should ask also, which meetings or which wards or which communities were that you
So
went to?
this is this one's for Jerome Park Neighborhood Association. I've been to the Greenmont one as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got Suncrest on the schedule for this month and South Hills as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add that I don't think a lot of the neighborhood associations meet monthly. Some of them, like I'm with the Woodburn Association, and we meet quarterly, so different schedules there. Well, thank you again, Caitlin. I do want to, since it's been a little while since we had our last workshop back in October, I did kind of with the big event for tonight was to kind of refresh our memories on that workshop results, kind of make sure solidify those, if that's kind of where the direction we want to go in. And then after that, talk about some project ideas, potentially. This will be more of a discussion as we kind of look at priorities for the Traffic Commission going forward. So with that, just kind of as a refresher, the workshop at the last meeting, we looked at the vision statement from I forgot what they officially call it, but the most recent comprehensive plan that's for the city that was adopted last year, I believe, 2024. And they have a transportation element, and we discussed the vision statement. I think we were all kind of consensus there in agreement that that's fine, we adopt that. But then we also talked about these up on the screen here, the priority actions, and kind of using those as kind of a launch pad of how we could possibly work on moving those priority actions forward. So if you recall, back in October, we kind of discussed all of these priority actions and listed them, kind of see how we would prioritize them based off a high, medium, low kind of priority here. And this is going to be this is a refresher, but I do want to take the time to kind of solidify that this could kind of be the official priority list that we've discussed. But this also is on the paper in front of you. I believe that Drew handed out beginning of the meeting, but it's also on your screen here. But just for the record, I'll kind of read out what we discussed, and starting out with high, and I said once we kind of finish talking about those, if we're fine with that, that's great. But if there needs to be some more discussion, we'll talk about it at the end here. But just to get this on the record and refresh everybody's memory, the 3 priority projects that we have listed as high, we talked about limit through traffic in the city as a high priority. Emphasize the creation of human-centered complete streets for the city's primary gateway corridors. Support emerging transportation technologies such as electric vehicles. It's been a few months. Does that still sound right with everybody?
Well, if I might say, according to the new federal administration, that might not be such a workable thing at this point.
Are you talking about the complete streets or just...
The electric vehicles.
Yeah.
The charging stations have been eliminated nationwide, somewhat to my understanding. Doesn't look like the nation wants to do that. Well, at least the current administration, federal, wants to do that. So I don't know if that would apply to us or not. Maybe we can do it without them.
Sure. I think, it kind of still remains that it could still be a even more high priority now that we,
All right, good point.
there's maybe not too much federal support, but so long as there's options, or at least, it's a high priority because if they are being eliminated, that we kind of look under this.
Champion it?
Champion it, or just kind of see if it is truly an option anymore, or what.
Yeah, I like that. Good response.
Is there any other further discussion, or is we still kind of in agreement that these sound good?
Along the lines of what Commissioner Cross stated, the entire Federal Highways Administration's Complete Streets website, which represents decades of research and findings, has been eliminated.
I will say, though, that is just website information there's nothing official policy other than they scrubbed the website, so it's gone. I know they're on databases somewhere, but...
Partially, yeah. Of course, the archive, the Internet Archive, right, is a good place to search for things like this. They did not scrub everything. It's that site was, again, decades of information. So I think people grabbed a few things and backed some stuff up, but we're talking hundreds of levels deep, in terms of the information that was lost.
Did you say that was taken down?
It was completely
Was there
taken
any
down.
kind of reasoning behind that?
Nope.
Other than, that's not cost savings.
You don't need to convince me.
No, I appreciate that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of things that are changing from the federal policy level. We should say that. Whether or not we can even predict where they will be, right? Appreciated Chair Brennan's comment that, perhaps the city could, have these remain priorities. I always, when you all stated that supporting electric vehicles, and I assume that you meant like electric cars, right, as a high priority for the commission, I raised my eyebrows a little bit at that. Just wondering kind of what the general, impetus was behind that, and how you would see the city leading that, other than just placing subsidized car chargers around town or something, right? In general, supporting an automobile infrastructure, right, is something that we do by default already in the city, and you know, other than, again, like publicly subsidized charging stations.
Well, outside of building them on our own, I think what this group can do is advocate for policy that would allow things to happen. For example, the idea of within the zoning, including regulations that would allow for that or actually mandate that in some instances. Similar to the kinds of things that you would do with housing in terms of the types of housings that are built and what the makeup of that housing might be. You could also have policy in place that would make provisions for that kind of infrastructure. So I don't think the idea of leaving it behind is, I think it's good to leave it here. What I'm suggesting is I'm not very enthusiastic there's going to be monies available for it. However, I think there are things that could be done that would encourage that kind of activity and should be put in place so that we're not an obstacle for that kind of activity.
If I could clarify, at the meeting, I've got in my notes that our priorities were number 2 and number 6. And I see number 6, the multimodal transportation is in the medium zone. So that just might have been my personal priorities then.
Did you have that as high, you said?
What's that?
Did you have that one as a high priority?
Yeah, number 2 and number 6.
And that's what I wrote, and I just changed it, but I had it down as high, and again, I don't recall if it was my personal reference or if that was the
I thought
overall.
at the end of the meeting, we kind of had a consensus. We didn't take any formal vote, but
Right.
Yeah.
is that how you recall it, or?
So I remember towards the end that there was, I think, Drew, you brought up a valiant effort to bring in the multimodal component in there, and I think that's when it kind of switched over to a high priority. I do not remember if we necessarily came to a consensus, since it was kind of later. And so that's a big reason why I wanted to go over this.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, I see you got switched to medium. I thought that would have been in high above the electric vehicles.
A good point there. If we're talking about shifting things around and reflecting an appropriate emphasis, perhaps the idea of moving the multimodal transportation to the high and moving the support emerging technologies over to the medium
Okay.
is more reasonable.
Is that how everyone else feels?
Another point too, I wonder if our current state administration is going to continue with the electric bus program. Any information on that?
I suspect that they will do what they can because that's employment for the state. Whether or not there's going to be funding available in terms of federal funding, I'm not real sure about that.
So,
And I'm getting mixed feelings, only me, perceptive. I have no insight but I'm seeing complaints that we're in dire times, and yet I'm seeing that we're getting an $800,000 kick that they didn't expect. So hard to know.
yeah, so, I like that Brennan wrote this emerging transportation technologies and then essentially implied comma such as, right? Implying that electric automobiles are not the only emerging transportation technology. And then I also appreciated what Councilor Kowecki noted, which is that you could approach support in different methodologies, right? Like you could put a smog tax, right, on non-electric vehicles. That would be one way to support electric vehicles, right? Carrot and stick kind of things. And certainly this, if you want to talk about policies, right, that could change the transportation system around here, right? This would be, I'm sure City Council would need it to go through the Traffic Commission initially, something like that, right?
It helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say, I'm not taking any credit for it. This is straight, those are verbatim, these things are from the comp plan, but I do think we don't want to necessarily shoot ourselves in the foot or be defeatist before we even look at these things, because part of, I think, of what we're doing being an advisory committee is saying these were listed priorities, but given political tides or what have you, or this was really good after really researching and looking into this and looking at our needs, this does not make sense or does make sense or something worth pursuing or...
Every activity is seasoned with reality.
Sure. So, I just want to, certainly, I agree, the feasibility is always going to be key for us, but especially as we're talking about priority projects and things like that, I don't want to necessarily stop before we begun unless we cannot think of a project or is not a viable, feasible project to move forward, so.
I find a lot of overlap between the improved multimodal transportation options, notably sidewalks and bike lanes, with the emphasized creation of human-centered complete streets for the city's primary gateway corridors. The differentiation I really see with the latter is that it seems to want to focus on the gateway corridors, right, and the other one's a little bit more general.
Right. I agree with you. There's a lot of language there that is the same, especially in those contexts.
And for that matter, I don't think the city controls any of our gateways, correct? Don Knotts, Willie Street, 119.
We do control a portion of Dorsey Avenue, and that would be the only gateway that I would say that we really control, and a portion of University Avenue. So that's a gateway within the city more, so.
Sure, right. Yeah, and maybe, I mean, again, I don't want to be pessimistic or overly optimistic about these things, but maybe it is looking at what do we have the authority to do within right-of-ways, or, you know, if we want to do something, who are the stakeholders we need to contact to do certain projects, or if it is internal corridors, it's a good way to, you know, connect neighborhoods and districts and things like that. So I know that the DOH is a major impediment to a lot of the projects that we've been trying to do over the years, or the city's been trying to do over the years, but I think that part of it is looking into those as time kind of goes past, or maybe just curtailing our expectations of what we can do with the DOH.
Well, again, there's a reality to this, and I realize what you're suggesting here to me is that our corridors are a concern for us. Our gateway corridors are a concern for us, even though we don't have physical control of them necessarily. However, we can make recommendations. We can lobby for specifics. We can be a voice for the community as to what the expectations are. And that's the fulfillment that you could look for here, as opposed to trying to take on a project that you have no ability, funding, or legally to execute. I mean, so, but to be a voice for it, that's completely different. And sometimes you win. I mean, identification of downtown streets, I think that was a win. I'm not quite sure, you know, if that was presented to us or that we argued for it, but it came away, I think, being advantageous. So I wouldn't get too far away from what your expectations, your aspirations are.
Yeah, and I agree, and I appreciate that sentiment. It's just, as we kind of, I would want to, speaking to a council person representative, that we do our due diligence and bring projects to you, that because we've done, homework is not just aspirational, but these are viable paths forward, other than just recommendations on our wishes and aspirations. But we've done a lot of the legwork for coming to council, suggest maybe, you know, with the power of the purse or what have you, to kind of, you know, make some projects come to fruition. But I think we would have to be good partners and prove ourselves to the council that we have the city's best interests at heart, and that we're providing viable, feasible projects that we can do given circumstances, and that's turning rocks, about looking at our current budget, what that looks like, and things like talking to city manager, whoever, this is actual something that we can do as a city, and then obviously with council's blessing. So I certainly I want this group to be champions of these projects, but also to, as a group that council can depend on advising properly on these types of projects.
So it sounded like maybe, right, we had you two stating that the emerging transportation technologies was not on your top priority last time, but that the multimodal was. Is the truck traffic, limiting truck traffic and tackling that problem, does it remain in everybody's top priority? Is there any disagreement with that? That this commission should take that on, or that you all specifically as individuals would like to take that on as part of your role in this commission?
I guess it wouldn't hurt to talk. Councilor Kawecki pointed out our gallant history regarding that attempt, so wouldn't hurt to stay with it. It's certainly by the desire of most community members, I think.
But again, it's one of those things that we cannot affect
Directly
directly on our own.
Right.
However, to keep it as an objective is appropriate in that perhaps we can encourage the activity in some other manner. Hopefully it will come along.
Oh, good point. Now with the acquisition of the property down there on Brockway, that certainly, could add a little leverage to the situation.
Maybe there's a way for this commission too to have influence on citizen interaction with traffic, not necessarily, you may not be able to determine where the trucks go, but you may be able to provide more transportation opportunity to people so that they're not encountering truck traffic as often. So there's perhaps that avenue as well.
Yeah.
In the sense that you take more traffic off the roads, more people are walking, perhaps they're not seeing a truck in as often, and so it's not impacting their day-to-day experience as much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in agreement for keeping it as a high priority. I think we know as a group, the city knows too of the, I want to say Herculean task of doing, but just kind of really, even if it is just kind of really sussing out what it means to limit truck traffic or what that looks like. But I do think that at least on a personal capacity of taking that on and really bearing the torch of it's been a while since that's been looked at. Just kind of refresh, and maybe too, if anything, going through these priority lists is just having it as a priority, but then having updating the public of the actions that we're taking to look into this, and then updating and having a record of people we've contacted, other types of avenues we've looked into, and actually having kind of a checkoff list of these were the actions that we have taken under this priority objective and the projects that we've looked at. So.
And Drew, have we had any kind of update on Greenbag Road construction?
Nothing other than a multi-hundred comment Facebook thread that I've seen recently. Outrage vibes abound. I believe it's still going to construction. The Department of Highways has not yet approached the city on the land that will be required for them to actually build the roundabout at where MTech Drive intercepts Greenback Road, also improperly called Mississippi Street, down there. So that's not unheard of. Oddly, acquisition of right-of-way tends to be one of the last things in at least the most typical, process that the Department of Highways has been using recently. But yeah, I heard a start date in spring of this year.
I've seen heavy equipment sitting out in front of the old bread store
Yeah.
/ restaurant for the past 2 years.
So that is actually the headquarters of True Largo. They own that building now. It's not just a staging equipment. So
True Largo is,
contracting.
that's the contractor
firm.
who's going to be doing the work?
No, they're just a local contracting firm.
And that's just the purpose of that lot now.
Yeah, So it's not staging grounds for. And yeah, that contractor in fact did not win the
The bid?
bid. Yeah, so they will probably have to move their equipment. I'm not sure if, I forget when. I think it's taking more of the conscious harvest rights rather than impacting any of those buildings.
It's strange circumstances. It's one of the reasons why they went after the farmland is because they didn't want to disturb the restaurant.
And the two other buildings that would be much more expensive to purchase from the same landowner, the Hastings, across the street from the thing, which nobody ever talks about, but yes, indeed. The turn lanes option would require the demolition of significantly more actual occupied, much more expensive property than the roundabout over there.
Well, just another chapter in the truck traffic.
So we have, again, getting back to this, right? What's high, what's medium, what's low? I'm finding also more overlap with the first medium focus area, right? Gateway corridors. Since you grab these directly from the strategic plan, right? That first one in the medium column, identify gateway corridors and district branding opportunities through the development of a citywide wayfinding signage study. There's a lot there, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but commissioners, maybe what attracted to you was more the wayfinding part of this than the branding part of this?
I think they kind of go hand in hand, but yeah, it's more, I see it as more of kind of like a corridor beautification portion. And so the wayfinding signage is the main meat of this priority, and the branding is just kind of maybe how, it references.
District branding.
Right.
Right, so I don't think any of you all are realtors. If you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that's a great opportunity to brand a new neighborhood to sell real estate, right? And that's cool, and I'm all for that, right? But probably outside of the auspice of the Traffic Commission, right? So it seems like will we need to spend much time identifying gateway corridors in the city, at least as from the perspective of the Traffic Commission? Or could we do that in about 30 seconds?
I wonder if because you had a discussion about what are the gateway corridors, do we have any influence over them? I wonder I feel like gateway corridors is kind of an ambiguous term though, and it could also mean the Dorsey Avenue is a gateway into downtown. So I wonder if it depends on how you define gateway a little bit, but if you're just talking about gateway into Morgantown, I imagine that's a pretty easy exercise.
Right. Ross Avenue being a gateway into Upper South Park.
If you want to identify gateway corridors that you have influence over, then yeah.
Yeah, I see this more of the identification. That's the easy part. It's prioritizing and kind of how do we want to, what do we want to do with these corridors? And then since we have limited resources, what are we going to do? So how do we prioritize those gateways is kind of more. So if we do want to do a wayfinding thing, it would be part of it is looking at the identified corridors, taking into account things like what do we have influence over, what do other folks want to do with wayfinding signage. If people even want to be identified as a district or neighborhood or what have you, this kind of something we look into. But I think it would be beneficial, since we're kind of trying to parse these out a little bit since there is overlap. I think it would be very beneficial to look at all of we can, like you said, it'll take 30 seconds to identify those corridors, but maybe how are we going to prioritize certain corridors? If it's for beautification, which ones do we have control over? What makes sense? Those types of things. So, but for your question directly, Drew, I do think it is focusing more on wayfinding signage for a traffic commission's purposes. Mm-hmm. And that could go for bike and ped board as well too. You know, it's how we kind of lump those in.
Actually, let's see, last summer I did contact Mountaineer Country, I believe it is. Their travel to promote businesses coming into town, and they came out and we did a walkthrough, and they did put a little promotional video on preferred routes to get to the waterfront amphitheater music summer series. And that was good. They put it out there. It was on Twitter, and they just came out and did it with a small camera. And my compliments to them, so they would be cooperative in that effort. Certainly that's not signage, but that is a method of communicating to out-of-towners how to get around town.
Drew, you should tell them the difficulty in putting signage up on state highways.
Good point.
Yes.
It's a Mother May I kind of thing. That's one.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted a sign right down there at the bridge crossing, Foundry. I wanted a sign that said, go this way to the rail trail. You don't have to cross the street. And that was tough.
Right. I mean, so wayfinding in general is a common topic in Morgantown, pointing out that we have a general deficiency there compared to peer cities or just what people would expect. But we also have more of a need for it, given just the high number of non-local citizens that we have existing in our borders, either on a 4-year basis or even just a visiting basis, right? 75,000 daytime residents, 30,000 permanent residents, right? That whole dynamic. And it has been identified repeatedly for the past 20 years as something that we should do, right, by all the various strategic plans and things. So we used to have a assigned bicycle network in Morgantown that went all through the city in the 80s, and have not been able to find any actual documents about where those signs were or what the network was. And so, yeah, right. Wayfinding for pedestrians, the most wayfinding that has been done recently is with the MRTC, right? The rail trail, they've been doing a good job leading the charge with certain types of wayfinding, right? But to call that like systematic and like, good enough for people to actually navigate without a phone, right? And I think a lot of this discussion was promoted in the early 2000s before everybody had a smartphone. And wayfinding was very important back then, right? And now it's not at least as much in the you literally can't figure out where you're going sense. But it could be, right, in terms of how do you, Google Maps might not route you properly to the lowest stress parallel neighborhood street that you could use to walk or bike down. Right. It might be just routing you to Willie Street, and we find a lot of people are, bike knowledge in particular is kind of an insider thing in Morgantown, where to ride, how to get from one place to the next. You got to cut through this little neighborhood and go over this curb and into this apartment complex and up this driveway, and all of a sudden you're at the Suncrest Town Center, right? I don't think we can really sign that, but right, it's a repetitive finding, right, that has come up. So certainly having you all talk about it, right, and having us, maybe help advise the city administration, right, that it remains something that you think it's an important thing, right? You've found it mentioned a lot in the plans. Maybe you could talk to the neighborhoods about it or something, and that would potentially be a useful thing to help making that happen. If you all again still think that that's an important, priority for you.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Is there a case study that you guys know of that, like an example of a city that does really good wayfinding?
There's plenty out there, sorry, go ahead.
We had a wayfinding study done back in 2012, very complete. Sort of died on the vine.
I've never seen it.
I have it somewhere at the house, so I'll rummage through it, see if I can't share it with you.
Yeah, please.
I contacted our connection at WVU. I thought about building a signage, wayfinding signage for WVU walking routes network for new students coming in and getting it particularly up there at the orientation program at the mountain layer. Never heard back. Not interested. So, of course, administration's changing, so it might be an opportunity to try it again.
So I was hearing Brennan talk about the prioritization, right? So we identify corridors, and then we're talking about prioritization, and when we're talking about, say, complete streets investments or multimodal stuff, right? I want to maybe bring up that we are paying lots of money to consultants to help us develop prioritization mechanisms for exactly these types of investments right now, and we continue to pay them lots of money to do that, and staff is spending a lot of time trying to prioritize in a systematic and defensible way where we should invest in sidewalks and bike lanes and such, right, first before, second or third. And so I just received from the latest version of this effort focused on just city controlled or city realm, right? Findings from the PED study, the pedestrian safety study, and so we will have those 20 projects that have are the most recent updates. So we last did it in 2020 for the regional level, and now we're doing it 2025 for Morgantown. So, that is already being done. I would suggest the complete streets, and we're kind of moving into the more projects, part of this last Traffic Commission project discussion here. The city's complete streets resolution that was passed in 2007 is a good example of a resolution that could be strengthened, right? It is a non-binding resolution, and even the State Departments of Highways sort of code and law that they passed in 2011 or 13, I believe, is stronger than ours, although it still is not binding, and we have seen several places where the state's efforts to embrace complete streets have kind of fallen short. But that would be an interesting, I think, again, maybe appropriate, given that this body is less technical now and more policy-based, right? Maybe a good and achievable thing for the commission to contribute to the city. And if you all do want the city to have a complete streets, right, you want us to consider all of our transportation investments in light of complete streets, right? There are right in here on the second bullet list, right, the last bullet, measure complete streets progress, Smart Growth America resource. That Smart Growth America resource that is referenced here is very good and provides lots of frameworks to update complete streets policies / laws / procedures, and we could. The administration would certainly, I'm sure, be interested in hearing, what you all thought we should do to update, and council, I'm sure, would entertain a resolution or an ordinance or something else, right, to update that 2007 one that this commission specifically helped to influence.
Sure.
Yeah. So rather than like trying to develop the complete street, right, and design the complete street, right, like how to really just make sure that the city is not spending significant amounts of money in the transportation world without that lens, right? Again, this is if you all think that is important. It seems like you do, right? There are very specific ways that you can do that, process-oriented, to kind of force us to think about that, right? Require us to report on, okay, what percentage of dollars, right, are going to projects that can be called complete streets projects, right? What percentage of dollars are going just to benefit automobiles, right? And can we, get that percentage in a better breakdown, right? Or again, would the goal be 100% if the city doesn't control any controlled access highways, right? So every single street that the city maintains and operates is open to travel by every single mode of transportation. Now that we have lifted the ban on skateboarding in the city of Morgantown, and rollerblading. You can now rollerblade and skateboard wherever you want, and ride a bike wherever you want, and walk wherever you want. I'm very proud of this commission for helping us to update that very strange ban that we had from the 50s, right? But so if people can take any mode on any street in the city, should we spend money on any street in the city without, again, that lens of considering all of the modes on that street? I don't know. Right? This is something that you all should probably tell me, right? I'm supposed to interpret
Yes.
the thing, but you all are the policy people.
I don't think you've encountered any of the engineering firms we've contracted that don't include that in their formulas, right? Kimberly Horn does a good job, so, they've been presenting some good things in that regard at some of the meetings.
They only, any consultant is only going to do what you tell them to do. It's like a computer, right? And if there is nothing mandating the city administration from informing its consultants that we approach things from a complete streets perspective here by default, right? And if we do, if we want to not consider the modes, or we want to not build a sidewalk, or we want to not build a bike lane, then we actually have to defend that. Right? We have to provide a reasoning why we're not doing that, versus we have to defend if we want to include it, which is basically where we're at now, right? And most decisions, 90% of the dollars that are spent on the roadway are generally just benefiting the pavement surface. And again, you can walk on that pavement surface. It probably doesn't feel very comfortable to most people. They're looking for sidewalks and maybe bike lanes and stuff. Yeah, so, Brennan, you brought these verbatim from the Morgantown 2030 right, plan, I guess. Do you think it's important to work on them verbatim, or do you think that doing something like taking on the complete streets sort of just ethos of the city, right? And examining the resolution, trying to figure out what other people are doing now, that could just achieve gains in multiple ones of these, right? But not necessarily take on it by verbatim.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, fair point to bring up. So taking these verbatim, I think this is the starting point, and we can shave them down and mold them a little bit, so, to what we think their priority is as the traffic commission. So I think it's good to kind of go now through these before getting into too much projects. If we do need to revamp and just say, rather than for a high priority of emphasizing the creation of human-centered complete streets for the city's primary gateway corridors, then it's just emphasize complete streets. Maybe to be a little bit more specific so that we have some guardrails as to what we want to focus on. But this is just the first highest level of our priorities.
Right, the goals or something, right?
Correct. Or even these are the buckets we're going to look at first. And so that goes, or we're going to focus our energy on complete streets. Now let's look at the projects. Let's look at the studies or the things that we want to delve into at the next level. So by the verbatim is the starting point. I think it's good to get this. Discussion's good to make notes of maybe how we want to shave these or craft these a little bit more. But using these verbatim, I would like to, it's 7:30 now, to get a consensus on what our priorities are. And just the rehash. It sounds like we have switched from high to medium, the support emerging, the electric vehicles portion, we'll just use that for brevity, goes to medium, and then the multimodal goes to high. But we talked about how there's a lot of cross-referencing and pseudonyms going across, so maybe we can just combine the improved and multimodal transportation with complete streets. Is that, yes? Mr.
Question?
Cross?
Not to get too deep into it, but as I recall, I'm not an engineer, but is there a specific definition for a corridor? Is that 4 lanes, Mr. Gatlin?
No, that is not a technical term. Gateway corridor is getting closer to a slightly technical term, but still not really a technical term. It's not, we don't classify a roadway as a gateway corridor.
I mean, not gateway, but corridor, just a word. I believe in one of our previous
Yep, and again,
literatures.
corridor to me would be highway. That's about as general as like a highway, right? Which could be a footpath, if, you know, by one definition, or a interstate controlled access, 18 lane, you know, we're in Houston, Texas kind of a vibe.
Okay, so there'd be no misunderstanding or restriction on the definition of the word then? Okay.
I would say at this point we would be as colloquial, as broad as possible, and as we look, we can shape.
I just wondered on the state level if they had something where they say, well, you can't refer to that as a corridor.
No. I would like to, you know, maybe point out that a corridor could also be a grouping of streets that is all generally parallel and going from generally the same place to the next, right? So that you could have different types of facilities, right, on different streets. If they're too narrow to provide everything we need, right, maybe we can separate people, you know, based on mode, on generally parallel places, streets going to the same place.
Okay, that clears me up, thank you.
So to rehash, high priority, limit truck traffic. We are going to combine multimodal and the complete streets into one, so we only have 2 high priorities now. Medium would go to the wayfinding signage and the electric vehicles. And we haven't talked about the low yet, but before we get there, does that sound accurate to everybody?
Again, sorry, so what about the, we're combining multimodal with complete streets?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And again, I asked this at the last meeting, do we know who put together this information package?
It was a planning firm out of Charlotte, I can't remember the name, who drafted the study.
But it was led by the City Administration, Department of Development Services.
Correct.
Oh, okay, great.
So, now that we know who wrote it, what do we do? Because again, I think our board would take care of this. How do we make sure that they are keeping up their end of the deal with these actions? Like, what type of checks and balances are there to, hey, we're checking in on this, or anything like that, like the accountability? Who's doing that? Anyone?
So that's kind of gets to, right, when I mentioned that the Complete Streets resolution passed 2007 was non-binding, right? It didn't actually require the administration to do anything particular, right? It didn't say, I want a report every year on this date, every year, outlining these metrics, and you need to form an advisory body of these different people that are, going to do X, Y, Z, and various things, right? So there's a variety of mechanisms that are open to making things binding, right? And that, again, that Smart Growth America, if you just search Smart Growth America Complete Streets, right? For that in particular, that would be a good place to start, finding the different approaches to making things binding, or very binding or less binding, or all of that. Now, whether or not you make the administrations, I think you were talking about they, when you say they, you're talking about the administration?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't see limit through truck traffic. It's difficult to see how, right, to make that kind of binding, but you could ask for help doing the legal analysis, right, or right, the land reuse agency, right, maybe they're interested in this, and they land swap that last bullet point there.
I guess I'm thinking, like, what was the purpose of this if there was going to be no actions to lead these efforts?
You mean from this page and this thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so as a comprehensive plan, there is an implementation table and how to get these things done. But ultimately, yeah, it's up to the city, whether it's administration or staff or whoever is designated to do it, to actually pick up that ball and do it.
Okay.
I think what we're doing as accountability is that we are taking that on to at least taking that ball a little further by moving it and try whether, if we do decide to go Complete Streets, if we do want to do the progress, maybe it's us that has to do that audit and present the findings to council and whomever. And once we have an agreement of what that's the accountability.
Okay.
That we have an agreement with everybody, what should be the next step. We've held ours up, we did the audit, you want to see this information. I think we would be when we're saying that we're taking these on, we are the ones who are saying we're accountable for them.
Oh, okay.
Let me go out on a limb a little bit. The comprehensive plan is kind of a survey of the community, part of which was done with the help of a consultant and worked through our development service department. Various meetings, various activities indicating what supposedly the community wanted to see. What it serves, its purpose that it serves, is not that these will be accomplished. Its purpose is that when activities occur, does this really fit within the comprehensive plan? In other words, I want to build a road. Is this really what we had anticipated within that? Does it work? So it's kind of a, it's a guideline as to how you go about doing the activities that will move the community forward. and serve the community in benefiting from, this is a project that that is really considered to be worthwhile.
And to justify your projects too, because they look, the community's identified this as something that they want, so, that's the reason why we're conducting this.
So don't look at the comprehensive plan as being some sort of something or other. It's fixed and we're moving in that direction and everything there is going to be done. That's not the case.
Gotcha. That is helpful, thank you.
So I'll ask again. High, medium, we're all in consensus of the understanding of, and I'll listen one more time. High is limit truck traffic. And the second one is a combination of both the complete streets and the multimodal. Medium is the wayfinding signage, and then the electric vehicles. Is that, you feel comfortable with that? As comfortable as we can be at this moment.
Yes.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Well then, do we have any issues looking at the low priority? I know we kind of talked about the airport flight offerings for commercial industrial, expanding those. Didn't seem to be too much interest in that, so it's fine as a low. And maybe we don't even, safe to say, we might not even look at that. If we want to go so far and say that.
Actually, that's been one of the recent successes. So.
Yeah, it's funny, right? The airport, right? Any strategic planning for the airport, I was showing off to Caitlin the other day my unearthing of ancient traffic commission records going back to the 50s, I believe, or no, it was late 70s to the early 90s. And so I'm going to go back through there and see if they mention airport at all. But we've had the airport authority, and they seem to take care of that kind of planning, right? And those decisions for that type of transportation tend to be outside of the traffic commission almost entirely. Perhaps appropriate, right? But maybe if you all really want to get involved in it, we could invite Mr. Vrabel to come here and start complicating his life too.
I live close to the airport, and there's a lot more flights, so I can hear everything coming across the hollow from Park and Run Road. It's like a big sounding board. And so there's a lot more flights now going out and coming and going at night, bigger planes. There's a lot more bigger jet traffic, not just the small executive jets that you used to see. And I think a lot of that's probably due to the addition of a major airline, not like regional commuters. Because it used to be, you went to Morgantown if you wanted to fly a regional commuter to Pittsburgh, Charleston, or DC. And now you can actually get on a plane and fly much greater distance and,
Chicago.
with fewer connections and get into a network of a major airline. So that's something I've noticed a lot just in this last year. So, and talking to a pilot that flies large planes for FedEx globally, he said that increasing the runway by 2,000 feet has made a huge difference. There's not much they can't land there. So.
Well, it might be safe to say as a traffic commission, we might not have too much appetite for air traffic, but I don't want to speak for everybody. I want to hear y'all's thoughts first.
And certainly the ground access has improved with the mile ground project. So.
Yeah, I didn't think that would ever get done.
Well, do we want to just take off this as a priority altogether for us?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they take care of themselves pretty well.
Perfect.
They understand
We can always
airplanes.
change our priorities if it comes up, so.
Yeah.
but I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. So I will scratch that one off, and that leaves our last low priority is utilizing the PRT as a placemaking asset and unique transportation resource in the city. Now, I will say this is a personal opinion of mine that I think the PRT needs to be made to much more of a placemaking asset for the city, is even if just the students are using it for actual transportation. I'd like to see expanded, but I think that the city should celebrate it, whether it's a public art on decorating stations or what have you. I personally would like it more than a low priority, but it seemed like we had a consensus that it was a low priority when we had our discussion. So that's my 2 cents. I'd love to hear everybody else's thoughts on the PRT as a placemaking resource.
Seems to me, even as a citizen, do citizens use the PRT much aside from game day?
It's shut down during the holidays and on the weekends. It's not available during the summer, and there's I don't know if this has changed recently, but there used to be a minimal fee that you had to pay if you weren't a student. It was like 25 cents whenever I was in school. It's probably more now.
I think it's $1
Yeah.
bill, so.
So maybe the controllers don't like the extra usage from the community, aside from...
I will say that I use it on a regular basis. I did happen to start a PhD again, so I am technically a student now, but I used it before as a community member. Almost every time I go there, there's somebody that is very clearly not part of the student community or anything using the PRT. And so when it is offered, which is not as much as it should be, in my opinion, but yeah, it remains quite useful. I do know that there's a lot of people that don't drive in this town, right? We have a significant population here that does not have a license and is in fact barred from driving, right? And so...
They ride bikes.
Some of them ride bikes, right? But yeah, the PRT shutting down over the summer is a major change in the availability and the mobility of people without cars to get around town, particularly if they live in, say, Westover and are trying to work somewhere on, say, like the health sciences campus, right? You know, it's extremely difficult. The bus traffic is inconsistent, right? And we have bus frequencies which are 2 hours these days on many important routes, so once only every 2 hours. And yeah, PRT, we go from a 5-minute frequency, option to at best 2 hour, right, on certain routes, frequency option for anything. And then of course, we can just tell them to ride a bike, but yeah, a lot of people don't think that that's a feasible option around here. So.
Any way to get any type of data to determine how many non-student users there are, or to support a cause to say, like, hey, maybe we need to look at this and open it up for more community members, or maybe have like a community like ID card or something like that, or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know. I guess the PRT office, aside from if you pay with cash.
Well, they keep good records of all that stuff.
They do.
And the buses keep more amazing records than you would believe too.
yeah.
So like all of the bike racks that are on buses, they know how many people take bikes on buses with the bike racks on the
really?
front. And
Wow,
the
that's
bike racks
neat.
in front are full. You can still put bikes on the buses and areas that are also designated for people with wheelchairs and or bikes.
Oh, cool.
But the PRT, I was here when it was built. That's why I've got the gray hair. And it was used a lot more by general townspeople back in the day, and it was when it was open 7 days a week. I think more recently, they've been dealing with an aging infrastructure, and so they use the summertime where they can close it down, because also summer classes aren't as populated as they were even 10 years ago. they use that to do work and service and stuff on the PRT, because they're doing
And
a lot of
WU has
maintenance
done,
stuff.
WU has done incredible just programming and operational changes to their class scheduling to keep students on campuses and not needing necessarily to travel across campuses as much as they used to, right? And so they've done a lot of, that type of change. But it is, it's a federally, what's the word? It's a federally,
Well, federal funds went
controlled,
into building it.
right, but there's a federal office in Charleston, West Virginia, whose sole purpose is to regulate the PRT. Because the PRT is the only commuter rail option that exists in West Virginia. That is, well, there's a little bit of the Amtrak that goes through the western part of the eastern panhandle, right? But that office, basically, it's a couple of feds, and their only purpose is to regulate the PRT. So it is, it's a known and recognized as a commuter rail, right? And
That's what
it
I
would
was
be
thinking.
excellent, right, if it operated and was more open to more citizens, right? It would have helped us to alleviate some of our traffic concerns. But I don't know what our share of that cost would be if we were to propose that to
Yeah, I wonder if that would be a
Mr. Evans.
conversation with the controlling entity. Certainly, any student that pays thousands of dollars of tuition, that's included. How does that relate to the average commuter who would pay the fee, whatever it is, if they're really crunching numbers to see if that's in their interest? Certainly, we need to add the aesthetic interest as well for the benefit of the community, to get pollution down, cars off the road. And could I point out, Chip would know this, that our Senator Robert Byrd, head of the Appropriations Committee, back in 71, this project that he brought in was termed Byrd's Boondoggle. Remember that? A lot of people around in the Senate and throughout the nation thought this is a crazy idea, and here we are. So,
it is an integral part of our transportation system.
Yes, it's
It's a
iconic.
Boeing, isn't it a Boeing engineered?
Yeah, it's
thing
Boeing
to-
Boeing engineered,
Yeah.
but prior to the PRT,
Okay.
the West Virginia University bus system, which basically was a loop that went from Towers out to the Med Center, and then also Towers downtown, and then downtown back to the engineering building, Towers. Those loops with buses, they were the largest single bus system in the United States, based on millions of people move. And that's why they decided to do the PRT, because the congestion of all those buses. You could go down Campus Drive, there'd be buses almost from the top of Campus Drive, almost at the bottom at the new intersection. Yeah. And basically, if you're getting on buses, you went down to the bottom, and if you're getting off of them, you were at the top. You walked across the bridge by the stadium, behind the Stadium Bowl into the downtown campus. And if you're in the downtown campus, you worked your way down through and got onto the buses to go back out to CAC, engineering, all the stops through there, and then finally Towers.
wow, that's an interesting fact. That's very interesting about all of that.
But the millions of people, I remember the WU is very proud of being like, not only the #1 party school, but also the largest bus system in the United States.
Or
So,
like the most heavily used bus system or something like that. Or,
So,
that's
it was
funny.
pretty interesting.
And at the time, if a student wanted to get from the mountain later to Towers, they used to have
They all used to hitchhike, yeah.
That was a big thing back then.
But
particularly
yeah, going to, if you had people in Westover and they could go to the Walnut Street station and they wanted to go out to the Med Center campus, basically the beauty of the PRT, it's a horizontal elevator, it's a horizontal express elevator.
Right.
So you say, I want to go to there, and you don't make any stops, and it would be pretty speedy. So, and if you look at the Spruce Street station, since that was a destination, it was designed so buses could pull in and out of there. And the same thing with the end station out at the med center. So,
Yeah, you're talking about where the sheriff's office is now.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, it's just a matter of getting the buses to figure out how they can promote that, if they would have enough people to do.
Right.
So, I think maybe one of the things that's making me feel bad is this structure of high, medium, low. A low priority makes me think of like a negative priority, like we're gonna ignore
That's
it.
why it's only yellow, it's not red on mine.
Yeah. So maybe instead of that, we could call this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
That's fair.
Or we could do, maybe even just combine it with
Sure.
tier 2, right? And so only have 2 tiers.
Right.
Tier 1, priorities are the 2 that we mentioned, and then tier 2 priorities would be the wayfinding and the PRT placement. Right.
Works for me.
Yeah.
If we want to elevate,
The PRT?
yes.
I want to ride it now to work tomorrow.
I was thinking of asking why tier the priorities at all.
Just so that we, with a small group, if we're only meeting sporadically, that we are really dedicated to one or two. Yeah.
And as Mr. Gatlin has been taking on some of the things that we can accomplish, my compliments on that. So those things that we can accomplish probably should be in a priority tier. Not to say that we can't accomplish the other ones, but we already have some momentum with the other ones.
Yeah.
We'll see about that truck traffic.
Yeah.
I hope y'all are ready to do some direct action, lay your bodies on the road.
Yeah, a little tactical,
urbanism or whatever.
Uh-huh.
That's the fun part.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't recommend saying anything. I got yelled at by a trucker. So, just beware. Yeah.
Yeah.
While we were talking about it, you mentioned that 2007 Complete Streets.
Resolution.
With the resolution, I looked online, I didn't see anything.
Okay.
It's on there. I looked at it last week.
Perhaps I could,
If you would, I guess that's where I'm going, is
Yeah.
if you have a site for it, I'd love to read it.
yeah, and I have it on good authority that 25 some odd engineering students just analyzed Morgantown's Complete Streets policy and the state of West Virginia's and took an exam on that. Maybe I will summarize all the responses and we can see what they say, and that would be a good place to start, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, we can, I'll commit to sending out a link to the resolution and then whatever I can put together with what effort has been put into it, analyzing it recently.
Awesome.
That would be helpful.
Well, it is 8 o'clock. I know we want to talk about projects, but I think it's going to be way too much of something to tackle tonight. So I would entertain that we maybe come back and make sure I'll reword this, priorities, look at some language, crafting, not high, medium, low, make sure they're very positive. Present that at the next meeting that we have, and then start going over some projects. You guys have these to kind of, this is just meant to be a discussion as far as these bulleted lists here, of just some ideas so that we're not just kind of staring at each other. We could just kind of talk about what this kind of looks like. So in the meantime, if you guys come up with other projects you'd like to propose, certainly have them ready for next meeting, or you can send them to me, or be so bold as to say send them to Drew if you don't mind, Drew. But otherwise, I have this new updated priority list. We'll make those come back, and then we'll talk about projects at the next meeting. And if anyone doesn't have any issues with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you
Let's
for
see,
your
can
work.
we, are the commissioner comments still on the agenda?
I did not put them on the agenda, but
If I could,
Sure, absolutely.
I would like to thank Councilor Coetti for his outstanding service to the community of Morgantown, serving on these boards and commissions. I've served on a few, and he's always attending the meetings, listening, helping out, getting things through when they need to be handled. So my appreciation, sir. Excellent work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And could I point out that, well, let's see, that was last night. I also work with the Mon Valley Green Space Coalition, and they have proposed a green belt for around Morgantown. It's been in the work for many years. That will certainly help with the transportation infrastructure around town. How did that go, Mr. Quacky?
It passed.
It passed? Excellent.
Resolution passed and was read.
Resolutions can pass on one reading, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very good.
So that is available on the, if you're on Facebook, Mon Valley Green Space Coalition, if you want to type into that. And it's also on the plantogether.org. The MPO is currently looking at connectivity with that as well. So if you want to get an actual look at that Greenbelt proposition, it's a proposal. It's there.
Please. Thanks, Matt. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you for your efforts.
Absolutely. Well, this is a good group, and I know that we've been wanting to do some projects and move this forward, so I think Sharon, for prodding me, so we'll get some good
You
movement.
should copy again City Council and suggest that the council people work to have their positions filled on the board. And I guess I'm one of them, so I will see what we can do about that.
I appreciated Caitlin Lewis attending tonight in her staff capacity, and wonder if the commission would like to extend another invite, and have this be a regular item, perhaps joining the commission as an ex officio member.
Yeah, I would love it if Caitlin, you're amenable to that. I think it would be a wonderful idea.
Certainly, and I'm happy to float that to my boss, but I feel that that's appropriate for our role in development services, so yeah, I don't see why not. So yeah, keep me in the loop.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin.
Right. Planning Commission actually declined to apply or give anybody else except for you. So you need to keep us posted on what's going on with Planning Commission.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll say they had the meeting canceled this past, so there's not much going on in the Planning Commission at the moment. But yes, they did not want to have an extra person from Planning Commission, and since I was already pulling double duty, why
Very
not?
good.
So,
Very good. All right. Thank you all very much.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
thank you both.
All right. All in favor? Yep, take it.